you don't see them, then I'll say something. But
Okay, yeah, thank you. Now that you point that out, I don't remember seeing them last time. So that helps.
Jenny and Alexa, you are also co-host, and I have opened up screen share for all of our panelists. So I believe, Jenny, you're going to run your own presentation. Steve and Stacy, I believe Alexa is going to do yours, and then Alexa has our applicants.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yep. And with that, I will go away and I will be in the background.
Okay. I don't think we've had, Steve, I don't think we've had 3 cases in one meeting.
I know the packet was huge, wasn't it?
Yeah, what's going on? And end of the year push or what?
Everyone's ready to get their projects finalized before the calendar year, so they can probably start their construction next year, right?
I guess so, right? It's kind of like Denver. Everybody's trying to get all their building permits submitted before they go to 2018 IBC, so it's like a mad rush.
It totally happens. And we don't have above ground storage tanks.
Yeah, nothing.
So that's exciting, huh? No, we're seeing our numbers actually grow since COVID started back in February and March. Our case numbers have actually continued to rise. So we have not seen a slowdown at all,
Really?
especially on the residential and industrial sides. Yes, been interesting.
Because interest rates are so low, right? Everybody wants to go.
Everyone wants to take advantage. I agree.
They wants to go buy.
Yeah, go buy.
More for your dollar, right? Dave, you're aren't you in real estate? You should be.
Yeah.
Well, industrial is the one area that is stayed strong in the side.
Well, it kind of hurts our people wanting to build restaurants right now.
Yeah, restaurants and hotels probably aren't the businesses that are actively growing.
No, that's
right.
Around the country, there's quite a few conversions of hotels into lots and apartment houses and low-income stuff. I mean, Wall Street Journal had an article here recently that said, you know, there's a ton of that conversion stuff from.
could see why, Dennis.
Jonathan, we're connected and ready to go live whenever you're ready.
Okay, we have all the city staff ready to roll.
Yeah, we have Mr. Hayter, Mr. Rogers, myself, Alexa. Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. I want to call now the Planning Commission to order. Alexa, can you please do a roll call of the commissioners?
Yes. Chairman Popiel?
Present.
Vice Chairman Amador?
Here.
Commissioner Kamak?
Present.
Commissioner Ingram?
Present.
And Commissioner Yost?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presence to the commissioners. Also like to introduce city staff with us present here today. That includes Jason Rogers, Community Development Director, Matt Hayter, Deputy City Attorney, Steve Timms, Planning Manager, Jennifer Jones, Principal Planner, Jenny Axmacher, Principal Planner, Stacy Wassinger, Planner, Jamie Rice, Planner, Trisha Mason, Community Development Manager, Alexa Ullum, Administrative Specialist. Thank you again for joining us tonight. Can I have a motion to approve our minutes from the last meeting?
So moved. So moved.
Second.
Second.
Alexa, can you please do a vote?
Commissioner Yost,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Ingram,
Yes.
Commissioner Kamak,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Amador,
Aye.
and Chairman Popiel.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion is approved for 5 yeses to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Will the city please introduce our first case of the evening?
Sure. The first case tonight is Z-616-95-21. Scannell Properties, on behalf of Timothy McManus, is requesting to rezone approximately 28 acres to remove zoning conditions on property at 9940 Havana Street, currently and proposed to remain zoned I2, medium intensity industrial, and to rezone approximately 1.84 acres north of the O'Brien Canal to the public zone district. Case tonight will be presented on behalf of the city by Ms. Stacy Wassinger.
You there, Stacy?
Yes, good evening. Alexa, were you running the presentation for this one?
Yes, I can. Just one moment.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission. As stated, this is a case at 9940 Havana Street, and a request to remove the zoning conditions on the bulk of the approximately 28-acre property and to rezone a portion north of the O'Brien Canal to approximately 1.87 acres to public. Next slide, please. So the two pieces here that are outlined are on the south of the O'Brien Canal, there is the bulk of the property that's being requested to remove zoning conditions that were adopted in 1995. And then that half crescent shape to the north of the O'Brien Canal is the portion that is being requested to be rezoned to public. Next slide, please. So as you can see in the future land use plan here, most of that property to the south of the O'Brien Canal is designated in the future land use map as industrial distribution. It is that piece to the north of the O'Brien Canal is partially floodplain and is designated as open space in the future land use plan. So that is the impetus behind that piece being requested to be public rather than just going to retain the underlying I2 that's on the rest of the property. Next slide, please. So with the case history for this site, this is the existing lot 4 of the Cass Transportation subdivision. The entire property of that that's east of Havana and west of Highway 2 that is currently Cass Transportation to the south of this property, and then including this property was zoned ag with annexation in 1985, and then was rezoned to I2 with conditions in 1995. And I'll go into the conditions in a little more detail on a future slide here. The proposed development plan, so lots 1 through 3 were retained under the ownership of the Cass Transportation, and then lot 4 was sold to another owner. And so it is being considered separately here as a standalone lot 4. For that lot, there were a number of other proposals over the years, including a proposed development plan for a contractor's yard that was denied in 1999 by City Council, Planning Commission, and City Council. And because as part of the conditions that are in that 1995 zoning is that there shall be no use of lots 3 and 4, which is a subject property, without approval of a development plan by City Council. So this property is currently undeveloped. There is a concurrent development plan and plat applications under administrative review. that would develop the bulk of that property to the south of the O'Brien Canal, but leaving that crescent piece that's to the north of the O'Brien Canal is primarily open with utilities and things like that going through it. Next slide, please. So the applicant's request is to rezone or to remove those zoning conditions from 1995. There are 4 conditions that were included with that rezone. The first condition primarily applied to lots 1 and 2, which were approved to be developed under a site-specific development plan at that time. And they had to do with a buffer along Highway 2. And that had to do in part with the fact that there was outdoor storage and those kinds of uses that were being proposed on lots 1 and 2, and the regulations at that time weren't as robust as they are now for screening and landscape buffers and things like that. Condition 2 was that lots 3 and 4 shall not be used for any purpose until a development plan is approved or reviewed by Planning Commission and approved by City Council. And then condition 3 or C is that any changes to the approved plans would have to be reviewed by Planning Commission and City Council as well. And then 4 or condition D was related to the development of the property within a certain time frame of the approval. So a lapse period that required that they begin development within 6 months and be completed within 18 months. So those are the 4 conditions that are being proposed to be removed, and we'll discuss a little bit later the why those conditions are no longer strictly necessary for this kind of development. As stated, then there is also a request to rezone that approximately 1.87 acre tract A, as it's designated in the concurrent subdivision plat, to public. That would satisfy the underlying future land use of open space, as well as bringing that into closer conformance with the comprehensive plan. So the concurrent subdivision plat is for 3 industrial lots in 1 tract, and each one of those lots is proposed under the concurrent development plan to have a industrial warehouse spec building type, totaling the 3 buildings totaling approximately 300,000 square feet. The users haven't been identified for under the development plan application. So any use by right would be under the I2 zone would be allowed to move into those buildings, but any other kind of conditional use or use by permit, things like that, would still require future review, even if the conditions are removed from this property. Next slide, please. So here's the current site aerial, just kind of orientating that it is currently vacant, with industrial uses developed to the south, and the property that is zoned ag to the north. One of those properties is being used industrial, and both are designated under the future land use map to be industrial uses in the future. To the east and south, there's that Eagle Creek neighborhood. That's the closest residential to this site for reference. Next slide, please. So here's the proposed development plan on that site. It's not been approved yet, so this is a draft plan. We are under administrative review, and it will meet all the requirements of the land development code and the I2 zone before it would be approved to be developed this way. You can see that there would be 3 consecutive lots there, 1 for each building on it, and that those buildings then are contain warehousing and those kind of industrial uses, or are proposed to do so. Next slide, please. So the next couple of slides are the draft building elevations, and I've kind of annotated here that on the bottom elevation, the west elevation, that would be the one that would face Havana Street on lot 1. that's adjacent to Havana Street. And then the other two buildings would be visible from Highway 2. This one will be blocked a little bit by the other two buildings, so that east elevation won't really be very visible from Highway 2 because it'll be being blocked by those buildings. So next slide, please. So that bottom east elevation is building 2, which was the middle building. And so that's the elevation that will face Highway 2. Next slide, please. And then this is the proposed building 3, and that middle right-hand elevation is the side of the building that would be the east elevation facing Highway 2. Next slide, please. So based on the DRT analysis, the DRT believes the rezoning is justified to remove the conditions as well as to rezone that portion to public. Similar conditions were common at the time, but current development processes and standards are more robust than they were in 1995. So with the current LDC and development plan process, some of those conditions are a little bit redundant and create more uncertainty on the developer side by having to extend that process and go through planning commission and city council rather than being a administrative review. And so in those 4 conditions, as mentioned earlier, that the first one kind of deals with a buffer that's part of the lot 1 and 2 development that would, lot 4 will be required to meet LDC requirements for landscaping and buffering and things like that, which are fairly robust. The conditions 2 and 3 that require planning commission and city council to review and approve the initial development plan, and then any changes to it are a little bit just add additional time when we do have a very robust development plan review process that can make sure that all of the LDC and I2 requirements are met. And then condition D, or 4D, which included sort of a lapse period to that approval for a development plan. The LDC does have lapse periods for all of our permits that we issue. So this would bring that into conformance with the LDC to remove that particular condition. So the both requests, the removal of conditions and the proposed area for the public zone are consistent with the future land use for the property and the comprehensive plan goals. This will allow for the development of the property in an industrial area to industrial standards per the land development code, and the proposed use in the concurrent applications is consistent with both requests, the underlying I2 on the bulk of the property and the public zoning on that 1.87 acres. Next slide, please. Regarding public improvements, there will be a public improvements agreement regarding including with any improvements to Havana Street that are required. No access is proposed to allow access directly to Highway 2. And the current proposed development will meet all city requirements, including engineering standards for access and traffic. Next slide, please. So this is the zone change approval criteria, and in the staff analysis that the requested changes do meet the zoning change approval criteria, including that it is compatible with the proposed development and surrounding land uses, that the area where the change is requested is changing is in the public's interest to allow a new use. In particular, under that back when the conditions were originally attached to this property, there was some uncertainty in how that area would develop. And now much of it has been developed industrially. So it is, these would be compatible with that surrounding uses, and that the change is consistent with those adopted plans and a proper mix of uses in the area. Next slide, please. So the required public notification, all documentation is available in the file, and it did meet the requirements of public notification. The applicant did also hold a neighborhood meeting on October 12th. There was one attendee from the Eagle Creek neighborhood who had expressed the main concern that the property being developed and the view sheds from his property because of the development of buildings on that property. In response to that, we did at that public meeting discuss that the I2 zone would allow technically up to a 50-foot tall building, and the proposed buildings are considerably shorter than that, around 30 feet. So next slide, please. So the development review team recommendation is that the Planning Commission recommend approval to the City Council regarding this case. Next slide, please. And with that, staff will conclude our presentation. We're available to answer any questions. The applicant is also present to present and answer any questions.
Thanks, Ms. Bassinger. Questions from the commissioners for the staff?
Yeah, Stacy, I'm curious, is that in the flood, is there a flood zone at that location? What's the rating?
So the area to the north of the O'Brien Canal is in the 100-year floodplain. And so that's kind of part of that. To the north of this little crescent piece on their property, to the north of that is proposed to be public park. So that's kind of the in the future land use map is proposed to be public park. So that's kind of the use of that area to the north of the property. Where they are proposing to put buildings on this property is not floodplain.
Thank you.
Has the area north of this 1.87 acres, is that public? Is that zone public or no?
It is not at this time. It would be in the, Alexa, actually, can you go back to slide 2? I believe that shows the zoning map, just for reference. Oh, one more. Yeah. So it is actually zoned public. I apologize for that. Yes. So you can see kind of the extent of the floodplain there too, is the hatched on that piece there.
And Stacy, if I understand this correctly, we're not changing the zoning. We're only changing the zoning for this 1.87 acres. Is that correct?
Correct. The other is already I2 with.
It's already I2.
And you're removing the conditions, or would be removing the conditions.
Will there be access from this lot to that public area?
There is not proposed to be any kind of bridge or any kind of point of access over the O'Brien Canal at this point. They're proposing it to have some of the utilities and drainage of the site, but not any particular pedestrian way or anything like that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Vice Chairman Amador, question?
I just want to compliment Ms. Wassinger on this case. This is complex and to a degree about doing a zone change, alleviating some of the conditions, but I feel that staff has enough control to be able to move forward with conditions and in the zone change that we're being asked to approve and recommend to City Council tonight. So good job. I just wanted to tell you this. I know exactly what you're talking about with I2 restrictions and everything that goes on, floodplain. This is complex. So I'm sure you've had many communications with the client on this. So good job.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Good point, Vice Chairman. Like you said, the applicant is available. It sounds like that might be Brad Cooney. Can we make him a presenter?
All right, sorry about that. I got kicked off for a hot second as it was changing over. So my name is Brad Cooney. I'm with Kinley Horn. We're the site civil engineers for this project. Noam Newman with Skinnell Properties is actually the applicant for this development. And so I don't want to take away from his thunder, if we're able to switch it over to Gnome.
Okay, if we need to, if you want to switch it over to him, Brad, can we make Noam the presenter or allow him to speak?
I'm sorry, what was the name?
Gnome Newman.
Looks like he has his hand raised.
Hi, everyone. Noam Newman with Scannell Properties, the applicant. Thanks for everyone's time tonight. Wanted to just give kind of a quick intro to Scannell Properties. We're a national owner and developer of industrial properties headquartered in Indianapolis, but we have a regional office here in Denver. And as Stacy had mentioned, we're the contract purchaser of the property that is the subject of this rezone application. I think we've identified where we're located there off of the east side of Havana at what would be 100th Avenue. And I'm joined tonight by my colleague Joe Marcotte, and then our civil engineer Kimley Horn, so Brad Cooney and Randall Phelps. And we had put together collectively a presentation that covers some similar points I think that Stacy just reviewed. But with that, I'll turn it back to Brad to run through that presentation.
Thanks, Noam.
Sure. So first off, thank you, Stacy. You did a great job with identifying all of the parts of our rezone application. So we'll be able to keep this presentation fairly short and sweet since you did cover all of the bullet points. But if you can go to the next slide, please. Just a little bit more context for where we are in the world. Located on the east side of Havana Street between 104th Avenue and 96th Avenue, bounded on the east by Highway 2. Next slide, please. And what the rest of this presentation identifies is the criteria to be met as part of the rezoning. That is consistency with the comprehensive plan, compatibility with surrounding land uses, no impact to public services, no impact to public uses, community compatibility, and in the interest of the public. So next slide, please. Consistency with the comprehensive plan. Future land use for the area, as Stacy mentioned, is industrial, which is consistent with the proposed use. Future land use for Tract A is shown as park. We are not proposing any development on Tract A as part of this project, and we'll be dedicating it as public space. Next slide. Compatibility with surrounding land uses. As the vicinity map showed, the majority of the developments on the south and on the west side are industrial. To the north is the First Creek Dog Park, which is compatible and aligns with Tract A being dedicated as public, with future land use as park. Next slide, please. There are no negative impacts to public services, including water, sewer, storm, and streets. Industrial developments such as this are typically low water users and thus generate low sewer flows. Stormwater will be in compliance with Commerce City and Mile High Flood District standards. And as part of this development, a public improvement agreement is required, and that includes improvements to existing Havana Street. Next slide, please. No impacts to public uses. There are no negative impacts to public uses, including parks, schools, and open space. Dedicating Tract A as public zone actually enhances the existing First Creek Dog Park. Next slide, please. Community compatibility. As previously discussed, this development is compatible with surrounding land uses and benefits the community by removing undesirable allowable uses from the Cass Transportation zoning conditions. Next slide, please. ultimately, this development is in the public's interest as it removes the undesirable allowable uses from the transportation zoning conditions. Rezoning to I2 without conditions also simplifies the development process and aligns with the comprehensive plan and future land use. Next slide. And this basically just sums up all the points that we had previously made. And so at this time, I'd like to open up the floor for any questions.
Brad, what was your thought process in your overall development scheme to accommodate the O'Brien Canal?
I mean, thought process was understanding that there are no impacts. We're not allowed to develop near the O'Brien Canal or up against it. Understanding that FRICO has specific requirements that we'll need to meet. And so trying to best make the site work while still keeping the O'Brien Canal active and not negatively impacting it.
Was there quite a bit of discussions with them, or did you just followed kind of their design, their guidelines?
Oh no, quite a bit of discussions, and these discussions have been going on for the better part of 8 to 10 months at this point.
Okay. Yeah, we kind of figured that would probably be the case.
Yes.
How did the conversation come up to dedicate tract A as public use?
Well, it does. I mean, it aligns with the comprehensive plan and future land use, and it makes sense to dedicate that as a public zone for the future intent of it being a park.
Okay, I would agree with that. Questions from the commissioners for the applicant?
Yeah, Brett, you had mentioned improvements on Havana. Can you extrapolate on that or tell us what kind of improvements?
Sure. So on Havana, northbound, which is our side of the development, we will be constructing a 12-foot wide drive lane. And then in addition to that, we'll be installing public sidewalk as well as turn lanes into the development.
Okay. Any further questions for the applicant?
Yeah, as part of that public improvement, is there any landscaping that'll be involved with that work?
Do you mean it in regards to like street trees and things of that nature?
Yeah.
The landscape plan is consistent with the requirements found within the Land Development Code.
Brad, there's also a residence just north of the development. How much of a buffer will you put between that residence and the development?
I don't know the exact dimension off the top of my head, but I believe that the building is set back at least 80 feet from the property line for that residence. And then we've got a drive aisle that separates the building from that residence as well. And there will be additional landscaping planted in there per code.
Thank you.
Good questions. Any further questions for the applicant? Thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll now open it up to members of the public to comment. I believe we have one person registered. Mr. Douglas, can we unmute him? Please state your name and address for the record. Please.
Sure. Steve Douglas, 10970 Unity Parkway, Commerce City.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have some questions for the applicant. And you're going to dedicate that to public space. Was there any thought about just dedicating that land to the city?
I'll take those questions, Steve, for that. I think might be best directed at the city staff on that. Stacy, was there any conversations about the dedication of Tract A with the applicant?
So there was a little bit of conversation on that, but it is not required that they dedicate that tract. With the rezoned to public, it accommodates the future land use map and the kind of the intent of that requirement, but they are not required to dedicate that property to the city.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank
Stacy.
you.
Any further questions, Mr. Douglas?
Yes. With this property button up against the rail line, are you proposing in the future a spur, or is there a spur off the rail line to this facility?
I'll probably direct that one to Mr. Cooney. Mr. Cooney, I didn't see anything like that in there. Is there any anticipation for that?
No, there is not.
Okay. Another concern I have is the lighting that's would be to the east, that will be facing Eagle Creek residents. What's the timing, once this facility is just say it's built, I know nothing's been proposed yet, but will there be any intrusion of lighting towards the Eagle Creek residents?
Take
There
that, I
will not.
mean,
Go ahead.
so Ms. Passenger, I know there are some lighting standards of how much light can go off of the property. I'm assuming that's part of the site development review process.
Correct. They will be required to meet all of the lighting code requirements in the land development code. Specifically, they are not allowed to direct light off of site towards other properties, and are required to have no more than one foot candle along property lines for that light to kind of go off of the property. So they will be required to meet all of those requirements in the land development code.
Yeah, and a lot of times, Mr. Douglas, those are checked in the site development process through the photometrics that the engineer will have to provide to ensure compliance with the code.
Okay. Last question. What's the setback around the perimeter that runs along the O'Brien Canal?
Ms.
So
Passenger, or Mr. Cooney, do you know that answer?
I know that FRICO requires a minimum 25-foot buffer around the O'Brien Canal, and I believe in most areas we exceed that.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank
Thank you for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. I do not see anybody that is registered else for the public comment. I don't see anybody else's hand raised, so we now close the public comment period. There were no e-comments received for this case today. So we will close the overall public hearing portion of the case. Is there a motion from the case from the commissioners?
Yep, yeah, I move that the planning commission enter a finding that, subject to certain conditions, the requested zone change for the property located at 9940 Havana Street, contained in case Z-616-95-21, meets the criteria of the Land Development Code, and based upon such finding, recommend that the city council approve the zone change.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on the case. I do think that it was commendable for the applicant to dedicate that track day. Like you said, that was not a requirement. So I think that was great for the applicant and the staff and to work through that. So with that, we will call for a vote. Alexa, can you please?
Commissioner Rios,
Yes.
Commissioner Ingram,
Yes.
Commissioner Kamak,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Amador,
Yes.
and Chairman Popiel.
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion has passed, 5 yeses, 0 nos. Again, thank you to the applicant for the presentation and for the staff for doing a good job. Thank you. We will now move to our second case. Will the city please introduce our second case of the evening?
Second case this evening is Z-966-21. The Urban Land Conservancy is requesting to rezone approximately 4.56 acres of property from public zone district to PUD for a transit-oriented development TOD multifamily residential project located at 7190 Colorado Boulevard. On behalf of the city, Ms. Jenny Axmaker will be presenting the case this evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. If Trisha or Alexa could enable my camera so I can turn it on, that would be appreciated.
Of course.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. I'm excited to present case Z996 or 966-21 to you. The address is 7190 Colorado Boulevard. The applicant is the Urban Land Conservancy, and the request is to rezone the site from public to PUD planned unit development. It is located at 72nd Avenue and Colorado Boulevard, 72nd Avenue to the north, Colorado Boulevard to the west. In the surrounding area to the north, we have an Adams County service building, home of the Adams County Communications Services Center, a sheriff's substation. It's zoned public. To the east, we have the Alsop Elementary site zoned public. To the south, we have some unincorporated residential properties in Adams County. And to the west, it's exciting to point out we have the newly opened RTD 72nd Avenue inline station, also zoned public. So the comprehensive plan for this site designates it mixed use, corridor, and commercial. There's also a station area master plan that has been done for this area adjacent to the transit center. So here's an aerial of the site. It's currently developed. It's the former home of the Adams County Human Services building that was recently relocated. It's developed with parking. Here's that station that I mentioned just to the west, the Alsop Elementary site, and then the Adams County site to the north. This history for the site, it was rezoned to public in 1989 and the former site of the Human Services location. So the request tonight is to rezone this site from public to PUD to allow for a wider variety of uses in support of transit-oriented development. And they're proposing two planning areas within this PUD, Planning Area A and Planning Area B. Within Planning Area A is the existing office building. They're proposing some changes to the zoning that would allow more varied office and commercial uses. It includes those uses that are permissible in the C2 General Commercial Zone District, in addition to those uses that would already be allowed in the Public Zone District. For Planning Area B, they're allowing a more dense multifamily residential use, 60 dwelling units total, based on the R3 Zone District. So the density is greater than what would be allowed in the R3 Zone District, and it also allows for accessory commercial uses. The DRT is supportive of this proposal and believes that the expansion of the allowed uses and increased residential density will allow the site to more appropriately take advantage of its proximity to the 72nd Avenue station. So they're proposing some revised bulk standards as part of the PUD zone document. So an increase in building height for the residential development by 5 feet. Believe that the station area master plan and the transit-oriented development feel is supported by this. While the public zone district, I believe, allows for 80-foot high buildings, the 55 feet high that would be allowed in the residential portion of this site actually would be smaller than what would be allowed otherwise. For the design standards, the applicant is proposing several enhancements, including upgraded building materials and the addition of the requirement for porches and patios within the multifamily development. The DRT is also supportive of this. So here's just a rendering of the draft elevations for the proposed addition of the multifamily building on the site. So no major infrastructure improvements are anticipated. Access will remain in similar locations. The traffic study will evaluate if there's any additional requirements, considering whether a signal would be required at 72nd and Colorado Boulevard. It's important to note that the Public Works Department did just do some improvements along Colorado Boulevard in advance of that RTD station opening. And a drainage study for the project will consider whether any on-site detention will be required. So as of this date, staff has not received any inquiries from the public regarding this request. And while I neglected to include a slide I can assure you that the notice requirements outlined in section 21-3285 were met. This property was posted, the notice was published, and the adjacent property owners were also notified. So the DRT believes this case meets the approval criteria for rezoning to PUD, including compatibility with the future land use plan, both the comprehensive plan and the station area master plan, that it represents an improvement in quality over what could have been accomplished through strict applications of the zoning code, and that it's compatible with the surrounding area. The DRT recommends that the Planning Commission vote to forward this request to Council with a favorable recommendation. With that, staff is happy to answer any questions, and then I'd be happy to introduce the applicant.
Thanks, Jenny. Questions for Vice Chairman Amador? Questions?
Yes, so it looks like this is a 4-story building. And on that curve that's there, what does the traffic study say in terms of access and volumes? Because I have a feeling that there's gonna be a lot of collisions and increased traffic going on here.
So I believe the traffic study hasn't been finalized, but it'll evaluate whether that access can remain in that same location or needs to be adjusted to prevent those.
Okay, that helps. Thank you. And there have been improvements as well, like you said, curbs, gutters, and everything along the street frontage there, which is extremely helpful. So it's nice to see this kind of moving forward a little bit.
Yeah, especially with the RTD, lot right across the street. Further questions for staff?
How large is track A and how large is track B?
So the total site is about 4.5 acres, and I believed tract, well, let me make sure I get the correct information. Tract A is the existing building, so that is just about 3.5 acres, and so tract B is just under 1 acre, and that will be the new development.
In the development, was parking part of the plan for track B?
Yes, sir. So parking, they're proposing to reduce the parking requirement from the 3 requirement to 1.25 spots per dwelling unit, but they're also proposing a shared parking agreement. As you probably noticed on the aerial photograph, parcel A has a tremendous amount of parking for the existing office building, and so they're proposing to share some of that existing parking for the new multifamily building.
Got it.
Further questions from the commissioners? I believe you said we had the applicant present today. That looks to be Todd Lieberman.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce Todd Lieberman, the Executive Vice President of Bridgeshore Development. And I believe he has a brief presentation, Alexa.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Lieberman.
Hi, good evening. Nice to see you all virtually. Very excited about this project and to be streaming at you live right now from Kansas City. Bridgeshore Development is a national development company, and we are partnering on this development with Nesbitt Development. That is a local Colorado-based development company in partnership with the Urban Land Conservancy. This development is a really exciting opportunity to build affordable housing near a transit station in Commerce City. You can see a shot of the site, which includes a 4-story building with a podium of parking. So 4 total stories. One of the stories is parking, and then also on the first floor is the lobby and some amenity space. A really nice courtyard area with a playground, and the units will be priced at all sorts of different rents, from housing that is affordable to people under 30% of the area median income, all the way up to 80%, which is more or less market rate. Parking is, as I said, under the building, and then there's some shared spaces adjacent to the building, but we hope a lot of the residents will use the RTD station nearby. We are working with a great architect locally and a great civil engineering firm on this, and are excited about moving this project forward. So I think we're going to move to the next slide. I probably talked too much on this slide. And we can go to the slide after this. You can see the site, which is shown in yellow across from the Commerce City 72nd Avenue station. Next. This is the first floor plan, which shows the parking as well as the amenity space and leasing office. There'll be a nice amenity space that goes up between the first and second floors. Next. The second floor plan becomes a mostly residential floor with a mixture of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units at a variety of price points. Next. And here's the shot that you saw before, where you can see the amenity space opening up into the nice courtyard. Brinshore develops projects like this around the country. We currently have 2 developments in Denver, one a few blocks from the Capitol building called Capitol Square, which just broke ground, in Sheridan Station in the city of Denver. So this is our 3rd entree into the Denver region. And we are joined today with our civil engineer and with the Urban Land Conservancy, who may have some additional points to add here. If not, thank you for your time, and we're available to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Liebman. Questions from the commissioners? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Liebman. No further questions, I think, from our side on that.
Thank you.
We'd now like to open up our public comment portion of it. I think we have Mr. Douglas registered as well. Mr. Douglas, questions?
Yes, I have a few here. I know parking was a concern. And then looking at the picture of the development, how it faces to the south there's 2 current residential properties now, 71-110 Colorado and 7090 Colorado. Is there any way that land can be willing, if they're willing sellers, purchase those lots that are next to said apartments? Because I'd see that's what, 4 stories high. That's a lot for that little residential lot.
Well, I see, Mr. Douglas, do you have a list of questions? And then maybe we can address all of them
Okay,
at
sure.
once.
Right. Okay, no problem. Being that there's 60 units, 34 1 bedrooms, 23 2 bedrooms, and 3 3 bedrooms, is there going to be a certain percentage, at least 30%, that would be affordable, run-in of affordable housing? Yeah, I know you said anywhere from 30 to 80% AMI, but do you have a set amount? Being by a TOD, it would be nice if this project was 30% affordable housing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. To address the first question, maybe probably to you, Mr. Liebman, how did you develop your concept of a lot, and were there any discussions again with those adjacent lot?
Sure. So the Urban Land Conservancy has been working on this with for several for some time now, and they have spoken with the adjacent landowner. At this point, the adjacent landowner, they had not reached any sort of agreement on selling the property, but they have been in conversation. And I know that the Urban Land Conservancy has also been in conversation with other parties nearby and nonprofit groups. So that's my answer to the first one.
Okay.
The second question's a simple answer. It's 100% affordable housing. So what I was talking about was the range of affordability. So we will have units that are available to people who are very, very modest means to more moderate means, but all within the affordable housing designation.
Okay.
And it will be restricted with a land use restriction agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't believe there was anyone else registered for the public comment. I don't believe we received any e-comments for the case. So now we'll close the public hearing portion of the case. We'll ask the commissioners if there's a motion for the case.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, based on the analysis above, the development review team believes, I move that the Planning Commission enter a finding that the requested PUD zone document for the property located at 7190 Colorado Boulevard, contained in case Z966-21, meets the criteria of the Land Development Code, and based upon such findings, recommend that the City Council approve the PUD zone document.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Again, I think this was the type of development that we would have liked to have seen with given, our wonderful RTD stop, just adjacent to that. So again, I'm in favor of this case. Alexa, can you please call for a vote?
Commissioner Yost,
Hey,
Commissioner Ingram,
Yes.
Commissioner Kamak,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Amador,
Yay.
and Chairman Popiel.
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion has passed, 5 yeses. Again, thank you for the applicant and Jenny as well for doing a great job on presenting the case. Matt, can you please introduce our next case of the evening?
Of course. Actually, the last two cases are going to be heard together. They are S-711-18-20. Catalyst CC Note LLC is requesting approval of Turnberry filing number 5 subdivision, a request to plat 222 residential lots and 20 tracts for drainage, landscaping, and open space for property generally located at East 104th Avenue and Revere Street. And concurrent with that would be case V-89-21. Catalyst CC Note LLC is requesting to vacate 3.527 acres of right-of-way for Peoria Street in order to realign a portion of Peoria Street to the east to traverse through Turnberry Filing 5 subdivision generally located south of East 104th Avenue and Revere Street. Your planning manager, Steve Timms, will be presenting these cases on behalf of the city this evening.
Great, thank you, Mr. Hayter. Alexa, if you could please pull up the presentation. Thank you. So tonight we do have 2 cases. They will be heard in one presentation with 2 different motions, case V89 and case S711. And the location and the applicant, as Mr. Hayter just alluded to, are found there as well. Next slide, please. So this particular property involves 2 parcels located in the Turnberry development, located about 1,000 feet south of 104th Avenue, south of the XL transmission lines, and they're east and west of the existing Peoria Street. And the requests are to vacate and then realign Peoria Street right of way a little bit to the east, and then subdivide the property for Turnberry filing number 5. And the property is currently zoned PUD, allows for residential, and the future land use is medium density residential within our comp plan. Next slide, please. So again, the applicant's asking for those 2 requests that come before Planning Commission and City Council. It is worth noting that the applicant also has what's called a PUD development permit, which is landscaping and addressing and construction documents, also under review for filing 5, and thus reviewed and approved administratively. Next slide, please. So traditionally, subdivisions are approved and reviewed administratively in accordance with the Land Development Code. However, vacations of right-of-way, especially active rights-of-way, have to be approved by City Council. And as part of the vacation criteria, you're required to take that existing right-of-way and then replat it into other parcels. And so that's the reason why you see the subdivision case before you all tonight as well, that it's aligned with the vacation request. Next slide, please. So here's our vicinity map, and you'll see the areas crosshatched are part of this southern area of Turnberry. The green line to the north is the XL transmission lines. And then the orange area to the east of this property is the Reunion Ridge development. And then to the west of this property, we have those three trucking companies that are in unincorporated Adams County. Next slide, please. The future land use plan here identified, again, shows that area of orange, if you will. That's a medium density residential in our plan. Next slide, please. So a little history on this site. So this property was annexed into the city back in 1998, at which time it was zoned R1 single family. And then in 1999, as Turnberry then created their PUD for this development, and as they began platting and entitling their entire development. And most of Turnberry right now, you all are familiar with, is on the north side, where the Starbucks is, and then Turnberry Elementary all the way up to 112th to the new rec center. That's all Turnberry, but they also own some holdings to the south, and that's what this area is. So, but up until now, the south side has remained vacant, but now they are ready to start developing that. Next slide, please. So here's the current conditions, and again, you'll see some pictures of Peoria Street, but it's undeveloped. It was dry land, winter wheat farming, and things like that. Next slide, please. And there's our current site photos. Again, Peoria Street as it exists now is unimproved. It's dirt, parts may be gravel, but it's certainly an old farm road that is undeveloped with no development on either side. Next slide, please. So this is just showing the proposed development on a large scale. So what you see is that diagonal road, that's the new Peoria Parkway. That's the new realigned Peoria. So on the very bottom of your screen there on the south entrance, that's where it would line up with the existing right-of-way. And then up on the northeast there is where it would hit up with Revere Street. And so up there by the Nativity Lutheran Church and the RTD Park and Ride to hook up with that. And there's a new, I believe, a new signal that's been installed at that intersection, but that's where Peoria now will go. And then on one side, on the west side of the new Peoria Parkway will be filing 5, and that's the subdivision tonight that you see. And then on the other side, the east side is filing 6. That's a separate subdivision, not being heard tonight, but that's under administrative review. But that will be more single family residential there as well. As it relates to filing 5, you'll see on the northern part is where they have their duplex lots. And then on the southern side and then towards the west, they have their single family sites. All right, next slide, please. So, so it will take access from the newly constructed or realigned Peoria Parkway. It will have a total of 222 lots. 92 of those are traditional single family detached. 130 of those would be a duplex lots. It does also have 20 tracks, and those tracks are going to cover everything from drainage, open space, utilities, landscaping, and there's also just under a 2.5 acre private park, HOA park as well. There is, and I'll show it on the next slide, but there is a drainage feature that has to capture and has to run through this development over to Highway 2, but it also encompasses some of the Reunion Ridge area. And then they're also proposing some additional landscaping and buffering and berming to the existing truck businesses to the west up there. This particular application has been reviewed by the school district and utility providers and fire district with no concerns. And sometimes it comes up, but as this time, no home builder has been identified for this filing, although with the residential market in high demand, I'm sure it won't be long before one is identified. Next slide, please. So this is just taken from their landscape plan, but it again shows, you'll see here the dark area in the middle, that's their private park, their 2.5 acre private park. This area here with kind of that white, looks like a snake going through it, that's the drainage track or drainage feature that will run through filing 5. And then you'll see up in the upper corner there by Highway 2, it will act as a drainage pond up there. But there are several different landscape and tracks spread throughout the development. Next slide, please. So this is just taken from their vacation plat, but it just shows the piece of Peoria that would be vacated, because you see right now it kind of goes right through filing number 5. And then you'll see that it would be realigned to the east and then hooking up then with Revere at 104th. Next slide, please. So the vacation of Peoria and the realignment of Peoria, it's nothing new. It's nothing that the developer necessarily came up with recently. It's actually been identified going back 20+ years. So on the left side, you see the original PUD for Burlington Northern Catellus, which is basically Turnberry, and you see the realigned Peoria Street down there. And then it was also identified in our latest 2010 transportation plan. On the right, that brown thing there shows the realigned Peoria hooking up with Revere Street and then Turnberry Parkway to the north. So part of it is if you look where Peoria Street would hit 104th, it's basically right there at the Highway 2 intersection. You know, we have all these diagonal intersections in our city that create some traffic issues. So that's one of the main reasons, not the only reason, but that's one of the main reasons why to get that off that alignment. And then it can provide a nice collector street throughout the entire development. Next slide, please. So the vacation plat has to be approved first, because you can't plat over a right of way. So the vacation plat, any motion would have to go first before the subdivision, but the DRT is supporting it. As I mentioned, the comprehensive plan and transportation plan call that realignment out. It also helps to signal that there's continued growth and construction occurring in the Northern Range. You know, that particular area between Turnberry and Reunion Ridge has remained vacant for, well, basically since the development of the city. And that's one reason when, you know, especially commercial developers come up and they see a lot of vacant land like that, they feel like the market's not quite mature enough. And so this will help to fill in some of those, I guess, holes, if you will, that occur in the Northern Range. And then it also does help create a strong collector road network through the development, both north and south, and provides a good identification and good continuity for all of Turnberry. And again, all the existing utilities in that area have been in coordination with the developer and are ongoing. Next slide, please. So there is approval criteria in the Land Development Code found in the exact verbiage found in your packets. This is just a summary, but it has been found to be in compliance with the approval criteria found in the Land Development Code. Next slide, please. So this is taken from the Turnberry filing 5, which basically then again calls out the different lots and the different tracks, and also then dedicates the right-of-way, both Peoria Parkway, but also the collector and local roads as well to the city. Next slide, please. So as part of the subdivision plat, again, it's been reviewed against the Turnberry requirements and the city subdivision standards, and does meet those. And it has been reviewed, referred out to different agencies, including the school district, utility companies, the fire district, Mile High Flood Control, Tri-County, internal city departments, and those issues and comments have been worked through. Next slide, please. So the DRT is supporting this consolidation plat. It is consistent with the city requirement for the size and the layout. Again, it shows the continued growth and economic strength in the local economy, which helps to entice future retailers to the area. And it does help to implement the community vision, which was basically desiring single-family detached and attached homes in the area that have been called out specifically for that type of use going back 20+ years. Next slide, please. So again, with the subdivision plat, there is criteria found within your packet, the exact verbiage. This is a summary, but the DRT did find that this was in compliance with those approval criteria. Next slide, please. So there is one condition. Within Commerce City, within our charter and our land development code, subdivisions are approved by resolution by city council, which requires one reading. Vacations require, they're an ordinance, they require 2 readings. And so there's one condition which basically says the subdivision plat is based on the final approval of the vacation plat. If for some reason the vacation plat is not approved at second reading, then the subdivision plat becomes null and void. That's just again, we don't want lots to occur over an existing right of way. Next slide, please. So there was notification done in accordance with section 3285 and also with resolution 20-30. You see that there. Next slide. As of, well, before Thanksgiving, but as of today, staff has not received any additional information or objections or comments on this particular applications. Next slide, please. So there are 2 requests tonight. Again, the vacation plat motion needs to come first, but the DRT is recommending Planning Commission vote favorable recommendation. And then the subdivision one for filing 5, again, the DRT is recommending a favorable recommendation from Planning Commission as well. Next slide, please. So staff's available now at this time. And then we also have a brief presentation from the applicant as well.
Steve, I do have a question, a couple of questions actually. Typically in a development like this that, and I'm not sure how large it has to be, but there's a donation of land or significant amounts of money to the school district. And, you know, you put 200 kids in that neighborhood, and Turnberry is already, you know, packed. What's the arrangement with the school district and the developer, or is this the right time to be talking about that?
Oh, that's a good question. That's an appropriate question. So as part of the same thing applies to public parks as well. So all developers throughout the city, but especially in the Northern Range, have to either dedicate land for schools and public parks, or they have to pay what's called a fee in lieu of land dedication. Now, Turnberry is one of those examples where they have to do both. So they've dedicated land to the north up there where Turnberry Elementary is and where the public park is. They get a credit for that, whatever that amount was back in the day that was done. And then any additional amounts where, you know, let's say it was $500,000. I'm just making that up, but let's say it was $500,000 credit they get for that land dedication. And according to our calculations, they would owe $700,000. And so that difference in $200,000 then is met with a fee in lieu that's paid at the time of each building permit for each residential house. So typically it's about $600 a house on each residential permit, but that's how it's calculated. Yes. So the who determines if a school or park is needed? Well, that's done as part of the comprehensive plan. And so if you look at our online, we have our master plan, I guess, for the Northern Range, but we've tried to space out school and parks in the middle of every mile section. And so while there's not one in the southern part of Turnberry, there is one just to the east in the new Reunion Ridge area that they're developing down there. So that's where the public park and the school will also feed in for down there as well. So good question.
The other question that I have is there's been discussion for decades at this point about you know, some sort of an intersection, maybe a flyover of Highway 2 and or Highway 85 and the 104th or 120th. And I know that nothing has really moved recently, but what's the direction of that, and would that have any implication on that intersection of Peoria there?
It wouldn't. Peoria is going to be too far east, so that won't directly impact it. My understanding is that the of those 2 intersections at 104th and 120th in US 85, the 120th is the one that is getting funded through both Adams County and the city. And so that is the one that would be, I guess, improved first, or, you know, built over the railroad first. And then 104th is on, I guess, beginning to be on people's radar. However, because of CDOT, it's going to be a lot more expensive. That intersection is a little bit more constricted. And there is no money at this time set aside for that one. But that would be the, my understanding, I think the second one, but you're still looking at some time away on that one. I think the 120th one is getting closer to design, I guess, if you will.
Thank you.
Steve, vacating obviously dedicated right-of-way easements is obviously a challenge. Are there other active utilities in that dedicated right?
So what we're required to do as part of any vacation of active right-of-way is the applicant has to notify all the utility companies and see, and then they research in their records if there is. And then the utility companies have to send us, the city, notification that yes, there are, or no, they're not. If there are, then that we work with the applicant, works with them, and we work with them to make sure that they're moving those utilities out of the way and then into the new right-of-way.
Yeah, I agree. And usually that's the biggest challenge of this. And I didn't know what those hurdles were, if there are a lot, or how those discussions were. Maybe that's a question for the applicant. So any further questions for staff?
Yeah, Steve, who will finance the improvements on Potomac? Will that be the city or the developer?
I'm sorry, on Peoria, you mean?
I'm sorry, Peoria.
It'll be on the developer.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we have two, and you all can obviously ask staff any questions. We do have two for Tricia or Alexa. We do have Michael and John we'd like to bring forward for their presentation, please. And I do believe we're going to have John Prestwich is going to be the main presenter, if I'm correct. And then we have an applicant's presentation. There we go.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, good evening. My name is John Prestwich with PCS Group, 200 Calumet Street, Denver, 80203. First off, I want to thank you for allowing us to present this evening. Also, a big thanks to Steve and all the staff in planning and engineering with Commerce City for helping us get to this point. Steve did a really thorough presentation. I'll keep it pretty brief. As you mentioned, the purpose of the request is really for the approval of the next phase of Turnberry, which includes vacating a portion of the Peoria Street right-of-way as part of the PD development permit and plat for Turnberry Filing 5, which is really why we're here this evening. So if we could go to the next slide. So really quick, we always want to acknowledge that it takes a team approach to successfully creating a new community for Commerce City. And this slide highlights several of the key team members for this proposal this evening. Next slide, please. So you kind of saw this a little bit, but trying to put it in context, we've got a vicinity map highlighting the entire Turnberry community within Commerce City. And then on the right-hand portion of the slide, we have an overall site map highlighting filing 5 in red there, which is it's the next phase of the Turnberry community. It's located south of 104th, east of Highway 2 and west of the new Peoria alignment. Next slide, please. So this really kind of overlays the existing Peoria Street right-of-way on top of our proposed next phase of the Turnberry community. You can see how the realignment of Peoria is really intended to match up with the existing access location on 104th Revere going into Turnberry Parkway. Hopefully that provides a clear picture of that. The next slide, please. And this next slide really it's showing some of the images of the existing successful Turnberry community. We are excited to move forward with the next phase heading to the south, much in the same manner as the existing Turnberry community. And we have next phase. If you go to the next slide, please. As Steve kind of went through, this filing does propose 222 homes on approximately 55 acres, which includes a mix of single family homes as well as duplex homes. The duplex homes are in that sort of orange color, and the balance are the single family homes throughout the property. The site is accessed from 2 points along Peoria Parkway, As also mentioned, it's bisected by a 100-foot wide drainage channel with a detention pond in the northwest edge by Highway 2. And that drainage channel actually also provides additional open space with multi-use paths and looped trails, which eventually connect throughout the neighborhood. There are other open space areas, including active and passive parks, as well as the large 2.5-acre park along Peoria Parkway. Peoria Parkway, adjacent to the site, provides connections to north to 104th Avenue. It also consists of a 12-foot wide meandering regional trail for cyclists and pedestrians on the west side. We also have a perimeter landscape buffer provided along the property, specifically along the western boundary, which screens views of the adjacent properties with the landscape berm and heavy tree and shrub plantings. If you could go to the next slide, please. And while not specifically, a part of what we're talking about, we are excited to show you this aerial image of the neighborhood park. The park is going to include multi-use turf play areas, as well as multiple playground areas with play equipment targeted to multiple age groups. There's also a shade shelter, picnic areas, benches throughout the park. And then you can kind of see on the right side of the park, sort of a bermed hill feature, providing a sort of an overlook. If we could move to the next slide, please. And this next slide really has just, some additional images of the park area. Again, you can see the shade shelter with playgrounds on either side. You get a sense of the bermed hill feature in the bottom left. And then it's kind of interesting, even some of the duplex homes will actually front directly onto the park. A pretty unique element. Final slide, please. So, I promised to keep it pretty brief. So in conclusion, this proposal meets or exceeds all of the PUD requirements as well as the design standards in the city's land development code. It's a logical next phase for the exciting Turnberry community. And with that, I just want to thank you for your time this evening. We are here and available for questions, and Michael Kirkendall with Catellis is with us as well. So thanks again.
Thank you, Mr. Prestwich. Questions for the applicant from the commissioners?
Yeah, I've got a question. I think it'll actually mostly be for Steve, but I do like the, the raised berm with the landscaping along those, houses that are going to be on the west side. As part of this, are there any daytime hour restrictions to the operation of that, trucking area that's to the west, for those houses that'll be right there?
So, good question. Yeah, I'm not aware of any because they're still unincorporated. The county governs those uses and those developments, but I'm not aware of any from our side.
Okay.
Further questions from the commissioners? Thank you for your presentation. Now I'd like to open it up for the public comment portion of the meeting. Looks like we have one person registered, Mr. Douglas. Again, if for similar to last time, Mr. Douglas, if you can provide me all your questions and then we will work to get them answered.
Sure, appreciate that. Steve Douglas, 10970 Unity Parkway.
Thank you.
First question is, what's going to happen to the RTD lot that is north of the plan PUD? Next one, it seems by looking at, this is just the layout, that the roads are kind of narrow. Are these going to be the same width as far as the roads that are north and existing neighborhoods in Turnberry? Let's see. Will you be applying for a new Metro District mill levy, or is this already set prior to the northern area being constructed? And the paired homes, will they have shared driveways or shared garages? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Steve, probably the first one with the future development, to the properties to the north. Has there been any conversations about modifying that RTD lot?
So my understanding is the RTD lot is not, there's no proposed changes to it. So that will get either improved or redeveloped when that commercial area develops, but there should be no changes to it, or it won't be going away as part of this.
Okay. I'm assuming the road width would match any, city standards that would define that. That would not be, something the applicant would define.
That's correct. So the roadway standards are either going to be dictated by the city's engineering standards, or sometimes our zonings have specific street sections in them with rights of way, and Turnberry does. So what they're proposing are the same standards that are in place north of 104th.
Okay, thank you. And then probably for the applicant, I think Michael or still on there. Okay.
Michael Kirkendall's here with.
Can you talk a little bit about the Metro District? Is this part of the Turnberry?
It is. So the Turnberry development, because it's about 1,400 units in total, spread across several hundred acres. When the site was originally entitled and approved, 3 Metro districts were created for the property: BNC 1, 2, and 3. BNC 3 is the Metro district that governs the south side of 104th. So the answer to the question is a little bit yes and no. There will be a Metro district here. It's already been approved, however, and is in existence. And I believe the last question I can also add, shared driveways on the duplexes. And one clarification to a previous question, which was the RTD lot. Catellus, in its current capacity, does not own the commercial area. So just for that clarification, that was sold several years ago and has gone through a couple of different iterations and is now owned by a third-party entity that we're no longer involved with. And the last question on the duplexes, there are alleys, so they're alley-served duplexes. It's part of the feature that gives us the ability to have them fronting that park directly. So somebody opens their front door and is onto the public park. And so there's not necessarily a shared driveway, but there is a shared alley that will serve the various duplex units.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm happy to answer any other questions that commissioners may have.
Thank you. I don't believe there was anyone else registered. There are no e-comments received. So we will now close the public hearing portion of the case. I will ask a motion from the commissioners first on the vacation case.
Yeah, I move that the planning commission enter a finding that the requested vacation of right-of-way for this 1,767 foot section of Peoria Street and contained in case B-89-20 meets the criteria of the Land Development Code, and based upon such finding, recommend that the city council approve the vacation of right-of-way.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion from the commissioners? Again, I think the alignment is something that is, will be well suited for that development.
Yeah.
Miss Alexa, can you please call a vote?
Commissioner Yost,
I'm in favor.
Commissioner Ingram,
Yes.
Commissioner Kamak,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Amador,
Yes.
and Chairman Popiel.
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion has passed, 5 yeses. Is there a motion for the second case?
I move that the commission enter a finding that the requested subdivision for the properties located within Turnberry filing number 5 and contained in case S-711-18-20 meet the criteria of the Land Development Code, and based upon such findings, recommend that the City Council approve the subdivision request to the following condition. 1, the subdivision plat approval is based on subsequent final approval of the vacation plat referenced in B-89-20. If for any reason the vacation plat is not approved in second reading, then this subdivision plat approval will become null and void and may not be recorded.
Second. Thank you. Discussion from the commissioners? Alexa, can you please call for a vote?
Commissioner Yost,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Ingram,
Yes.
Commissioner Kamak,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Amador,
Yes.
and Chairman Popiel.
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion is passed, 5 yeses. Thank you to the applicant. Thank you, Steve, for your presentation tonight. That will conclude our cases that we will be reviewing tonight. We'll now move over to any commission business. Anything new from the commissioners that we need to discuss? How about any legal business? Matt, anything that we need to discuss?
I have nothing for you this evening, other than to, actually, I'm good. Thanks.
Steve, any, or Jason, any staff business we need to discuss?
Yeah, just wishing you all a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. We should not have a special PC meeting between now and Christmas, but we will have some cases for January. So, and it'll be January the 5th, I believe, for that. So look forward to seeing you all in the new year.
Okay.
Thank you. Mention that we did have a new staff member that was on the line tonight. So
Yes, we did. You're right. We did. Thank you for reminding me. We did hire a new planner. Jamie Rice is her name. She'll be helping on a variety of projects for us. She came from Douglas County, so we used someone from Douglas County, and she's worked on a variety of developments down there. But we're happy to have her, and you'll be seeing her before you all here before too long. So, yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
Welcome to the team, and share the sentiment. I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving and have a Merry Christmas. And with that, we will adjourn our meeting today.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.